What is up, people? I am doing tier lists. Never done a tier list. Well, I've done tier lists before in the past, like I'm on my computer, but I never recorded one before. Where each of these films try and just sum up like the more important points. Yeah, let's get going. All right, so the first one we have here is Raiders of the Lost Ark. Personally, one of my favorite ones. Obviously, it's the introduction to the character that we, used to recognize until this other movie happened. But besides that, at least to me, felt like the most balanced, had nice constant action, got a nice side character as well. We even got the one infamous scene where, he was going to fight off those guys with swords, but then he just whips out his pistol and just, yeah, fuck it. But it also kind of had, like, the aspects of Indy's not just some badass. He has that, like that human side of him, afraid of snakes, or when he thought that he lost Marianne for a moment in that explosion. But things like that makes the character more believable, that you can kind of relate to in a way. And, also with the infamous desert chase scene, him hanging on to, like, the logo of the car, and then just slips and falls off, goes underneath, and then just getting dragged. That shit was great. So for this one, this is an automatic S tier. All right, next we have Temple of Doom. Now, yes, this one was super controversial. That one, like, underground sequence of those people that were doing the whole ritual and ripping hearts out and sacrificing. That was so controversial to the point where they actually had to change from PG to PG-13. Now, although it was controversial, to be honest, I can respect the fact that they tried to, they took a risk with this and just being more batshit crazy. It's the most craziest and violent movie out of all the others. And for the side character in this one, it's my personal favorite, which is Short Round. It's my personal favorite. He was helpful and had an actual nice bondage with Indy, and especially with the little backstory, how he, Indy became friends with him. And again, even though there was lots of fucked up things and, being super violent, honestly, I think this also has my personal favorite chase scene, which is the mine carts. Where have you really seen another kind of like mine cart chase? Yeah, you have typical ones like with cars. A mine cart? I gotta admit, that was pretty fucking cool, especially when, they got like Short Round and he was kind of covering over the edge trying to pull him and shit. That was tense. Now with the actual ancient artifact, this one's definitely my least favorite. Just some rocks essentially just brought back to life, like the whole like little village that they ended up in. It's alright. This one, it definitely, again, it took a risk, and it's a lot more crazy and violent, which I can appreciate, but I can see how it can, I guess, ruin the experience to some people, and I can understand that. I still enjoy this movie for sure. I think I'm going to put this at an A. Alright, next is The Last Crusade. They focus more on, like, the bondage between Indy and his father, which I definitely did like. I did like that aspect. That's kind of what the other ones were, like, kind of lacking, or just didn't really have much. You have The Lost Ark where, where Indy and Marianne were on the boat, and then he was just telling Marianne places that hurt and just the kiss and shit. So that was cute, but that was generally about it. But definitely this one, focus more on that. It's nice. It's generally nice to go through, and still, it had pretty comedic parts as well. Especially the one where they're both on a plane, and then just hugging his father is shooting, takes his own tail off the way, and is like, son, we've been hit. And towards the end of the film, it had at least a nice lesson. We all get that Indy loves archaeology. This is his true passion. But the moment he locks his eyes on the Holy Grail, and he's trying to grab it, but then his father's like, listen, Indy, sometimes it ain't worth it. And especially, like, the little detail that I liked is that throughout the film, he doesn't really call, like, Indy the way he prefers to be called. Then in that moment, he's like, Indiana, it's not worth it. Then Indy comes to to his senses, be like, you know what, it's really not all that worth it and stuff. Especially when the place was all just like crumbling down and shit. It was a nice lesson. It was a nice life lesson. And one last thing I want to touch, the ending was them literally just going off into the sunset. How much more of an ending can you get? Yeah, I'm definitely going to give this one an A. For sure. It's the bondage between Indy and his father that really makes up for the film. And now we get to these last two. Okay, so with the Crystal Skull, I think it's just an overall mediocre movie. It's not garbage by any means. It just loses its charm a bit. Just can't get over, like, the terrible looking scenes, especially the sword fighting scene. My God. How do you manage to make it look so bad comparing to films from the other three films from the 80s? Their clothing didn't look dirty at all. It looks so polished. Another thing that a lot of people like to say about this is like the actual about the relationship between Indy and his son. It's kind of hard to even like this, but I would say like towards the end, he kind of gets his acts together, but his character was was fine. I at least found it a bit funny that at first, when he goes on a mission with Indy, not knowing it was his son, he was talking about like, oh, I just want to like do this for the rest of my life. And Indy's like, all right, I mean, you don't have to go to school, and you want to do that, then go ahead. And then when he finds out it's his son, he's like, oh no, you're going back to school. And just in general, there's like certain scenes that I feel like there's just, it's either like something weird or it feels like we're missing some context here. Example being, his son sees his like writing on the wall, and then he just cries out of nowhere. It's like, when I rewatched this movie again, and I got to that part, it's like, what? Why are you crying? It's hard to, have that connection with him when he was crying because, well, we didn't really get that much context to begin with. Or another, like, weird-ass scene is that when they're both in the truck, they're all tied up, and then, he hands him over a knife, and then he gets behind his back. I generally thought he fucking stabbed himself. But then he just continues like it's nothing. I was like, wait, what? Then why was this scene so awkward? And then you have the fucking ending. The crystal skull gets put on to the last, like, skeletal piece. Then next a whole bunch of shit's happening. A portal fucking opens. Everything starts crumbling around. Then a huge UFO comes out. And even though this is like kind of like the stain of the fucking films, this is also another example of like a clear send-off. Like he married Marion, and then that's it. At least to me it was, but nope. His son somehow became Tarzan and just knew how to like swing from vine to vine. Oh, and fucking nuke fridge. Pretty much the two most dumbest thing in the film. Well, I mean, I don't know why I'm even thinking of this. I already know where I'm going to place this. It's definitely going to C. You can still have some enjoyment with this. Yeah, no, that's a comfortable C for sure. And here we are with our final one. Dial of Destiny. Without a doubt, first 20 minutes of the film. Easily the most enjoyment I've had. That is what an Indiana Jones film is all about. I still don't think that this film is even like considered garbage either. I had some enjoyment, but it's generally like a stoop down when comparing it like to the Crystal Skull. Story-wise, it was very generic. Certain like chase scenes, they went on for much longer than it really should have. And from place to place that they were going to, it's just like, all right, we're gonna be here, and then we're gonna be here. And then the finale, we're going to be here. There's no, like, really, like, meaningful sort of, like, build up to these. That makes sense. And it definitely doesn't help the fact that this movie was over 2.5 hours long. And I still cannot get over the character development. Got this arrogant fucking goddaughter. I'm in search for this, And once I get it, I'm just going to get it I'm just going to sell it for some whole hard cash. And he's also being a complete dick to Indy. Then eventually just has a heart-to-heart with him. What? No. All the shit you've done, I would have not forgiven you that easy. And my goodness, fucking Teddy. Bro, he was just there for the sake of being there. I mean, somehow this motherfucker went from, having mechanics of a plane, wanting to actually, fly one day, to eventually getting put in the scene of, like, trying to save Indiana Jones. And then the god that was like, know how to fly a plane? Never rode one before. Like, oh, well, great. Or he goes on one anyways. And next I can magically fly. Even especially during a fucking rainstorm. I'm still saying this. He should have been the one that was, like, the main protagonist. And yes, the ending was, was nice. Especially the little references. But it's just, I feel like a lot of what's happened in the film, I can't really get all that, happy for that, for the ending. Again, I do not think that this film is complete garbage. I still had some enjoyment. Of all these Indiana Jones films, there's none that I didn't have at least some enjoyment. One of the more positive things I can say for this is just the soundtrack. John Williams, yeah, we're just going to comfortably put it at a D. But yeah, that's basically my tier list for all the Indiana Jones films. These 3 films, the good ones. These 2 should have never fucking happened. But anyways, later.